Hi all, good morning and good evening. Myself Chandan Navara, I'm working as delivery manager for career practices at Royal Sabre. Before we are going to talk about Royal Sabre test automation framework, in general, what kind of business challenges while doing the or implementing test automation we will see here quickly. Whenever we are going to implement test automation in any of the business provided for the specific customer or for any a product or a kind of service, like for given applications, we are having the high resource utilization, because to go with any kind of framework, resources needs to be work from the requirements and specifications towards the and they need to understand all the business requirements and in detail of validations they need to understand. In this case, resources utilization for this test automation is going to be very high. Okay, and a lot of cost involved also. Why I'm mentioning this one, cost incurred is any kind of commercial tool we are going to use for test automation, there's a lot of licensing costs will be there, and the resource who is working on those commercial product also needs to be aware of what exactly this commercial product is all about for this test automation. Okay, in this case, this is one of the biggest business challenge as well, and time consumption as well. Along with the business, they need to understand the what are all the technically needs to configure this. How exactly needs to test automation. There's a lot of time consumption and time consuming is involved here. So, and coming to the business insight, from the business perspective, people are having the different stakeholders are having a different views and ideas and their understanding level. This is one of the, again, one more business challenge. And all the time, and we are having the technical expert shortage, like test automation experts may not be, everyone is having the similar kind of knowledge. Right, from the business perspective, we are seeing in the sense this is one of the major challenge as well. So these are all the major business challenges while we are doing this test automation for any given service or product-based automation, test automation. So coming to the technical aspects, we are seeing there are several technical challenges also there while implementing this test automation. So majorly this reusability and maintenance of the scripts, like one tool already using by a customer, later point of time by seeing the what are all the benefits they are facing, like they want to move to any other specialized or a kind of open source available. So in that particular case, this reusability and maintenance of test scripts are going to be a major challenge. And considering this one, like a deeper level of verification and validation, all the time, business requirements are not very clear, try to understand the business requirement in a detailed manner and addressing all the requirements and understanding those things. So at that moment, the deeper level of verification and validation are going to be a specific technical challenge. And all the time, this test scenarios might not be pretty straightforward. There will be a kind of, there are a lot of complex test scenarios from the business perspective. So needs to understand those business requirements as well, and needs to implement those things, implementing those requirements in a specific technically needs to understand and needs to implement the test automation also. So these are all the one set of technical challenges I'm talking about here. And coming to the next technical challenge that is going to be nowadays is happening there, like the DevOps continuous integration and continuous delivery. Considering this particular thing as part of the continuous testing, we need to integrate it with this DevOps practices. It is going to be one of the major technical challenge as well. And all the time, manual UI validation, right? From the functional test automation perspective, apart from the functional test automation, UI needs to be validated all the time manually. Image comparison, or specifically this appearance is going to be good or not. This kind of validations are there. This is the one of the technical challenge while doing the functional test automation from end to end. So, and coming to this execution, right? Like, test execution, test automation, using test automation is going to be used at that time. Like, execution this, from the end-to-end test automations in the parallel environments, parallel execution needs to happen, and multi-platform as well. Considering this, multiple browsers, this test automation needs to be happen, and different platforms like Windows as well as iOS and other mobile platforms also, these tests needs to be executed parallelly. In this this is also one of the major technical challenge while implementing this test automation. So keeping all these business challenges and technical challenges, we come up with our Royal Cyber come up with a kind of idea, like a triggered with a majorly addressing to the 4 major aspects. What are all those things? Let us see quickly. Next slide, please. Moving to the next slide. Yeah, that is as I discussed earlier, like this one, like end-to-end test automation, this the functional test automation, and UI validation, that user interface validation needs to be done automatically with the use of this framework, and reporting needs to be happen after the successful execution. That reporting needs to be done from the end-to-end automation level, functional automation level, and the UI validation level, and parallel execution reporting also needs to be provided. And the integration with the test management tools and the DevOps tools also is one of the major aspects. So based on these 4 major facts, aspects, this test automation service with the Royal Cyber's test automation framework has been delivered. So we'll see quickly what are all the benefits by using this framework. So every test automation, team member is going to be an automation expert while using this framework is going to be happen. It's going to be happen, and effective automation emails and entails a cost reduction, time effectiveness, and rapid delivery. Okay, and easy automation of challenges tasks, like as I told, like UI validation is also one of the major aspects. Like along with the functional automation, UI validations also will be done automatically by using this framework, and easy integration with the DevOps tools, and automation is the coverage is going to be happen. Okay, and overall the quality perspective. And coming to this Royal Cyber's test automation framework is basically not only this functional test automation and the UI validation and integration with the test management and DevOps tools. It will also do like so the web services automation also is which basically SOAP-based web services as well as the RESTful-based APIs as well. So these are all the major aspects and the triggering points to use, to come up with the Royal Cyber's test automation framework. And using this test automation framework, we'll cover functional testing as well as integrated testing, responsive template testing as well, and the API supported testing also we are going to provide, and data driven testing as well, and unit testing from the developers aspect, and mobile testing. These are all the different testings TIF is going to be concentrated on. Using the TIF, we can achieve. And this is a effortless test automation basically, and uncomplicated as well. By using this framework, your testing test automation is going to be very smooth. That's all I can say. And effective usage of time you can use, and effect reduction also. It will be part of this test automation framework. So basically, in detailed level of what exactly the architectural view and what on top of what are all the tools this test automation framework has been built on, our test automation expert Swathin is going to detailedly describe you guys. Okay. Hi Swathin, could you please take off? Yeah.
Hi Chandan, thank you so much for the intro.
Yeah, thank you, Swathin. Yeah. Go ahead, please.
Hello everyone. Thank you for joining us today once again. And Chandan was able to touch upon the various challenges that different QA teams face when they approach automation, and some of these challenges hinder these teams from achieving maximum return on investment and to actually see the benefit of test automation. So on the upcoming slides, I would like to touch upon how at RC, with the help of RC's test automation framework TIF, we overcome these challenges, how we have delivered solutions where we were able to help our customers achieve high level of automation and to really get the actual return on investment that we hope for. So getting into the slide, we talk about the different open source technology that we use as part of TEEF. So to start with, the solution is based or built on Java, and we are using Selenium WebDriver as a co-driver to be able to automate web applications. RC TEEF is not limited to just web applications. We can also automate native applications on Windows, Mac, and on mobile devices like iOS and Android devices using other tools available. So Selenium, since this is we are focusing on web-based applications as well as for mobile, Selenium is one of the core enablers in this area that enables highly efficient test automation with the greatest support available in any platform. We are using Cucumber for our test definition. So basically the idea here is to follow a behavior-driven approach in terms of defining the tests. Behavior-driven development is also another aspect wherein we can, which we enable, wherein we can write tests and features and scenarios beforehand, before development, and then enable unit testing to ensure maximum quality. The next component, APM, is a tool that enables extending our tests onto mobile devices. So basically, APM is one of the leading tools that enable mobile test automation, and at a very great scale at that. iOS and Android devices are seamlessly covered. Next, I would like to talk about is an interesting tool that is Gallon framework. Until recently, UI validation was a human-only task because someone has to go in, verify the UI elements manually, make sure that the UI elements match the expectations and requirement specifications that were listed out during the development. But with the advent of some of the tools in the market currently, we are able to do UI validation automatically. A lot of tools take the approach of taking up a baseline image and comparing image and achieve, but Gallon has a unique approach wherein it does pixel by pixel comparison by means of notations that are written. If you will, you could say specifications, and based on these specifications, these UI on mobile, desktop, and all these different platforms, we are able to validate the UI of the application. That way, enabling automation in this area of testing as well. Selenium is an interesting tool as well. It is an enhancement on the existing Selenium grid. This works with Docker to give you scalable Selenium grid infrastructure. So basically, what this means is that you can, on the fly, execute on multiple platforms, multiple different machines that in the form of containers, and execute your tests parallelly on different browsers and different platforms. And another advantage that Selenium brings to the table is that it gives you complete video recording of your execution. So going forward, so the idea of RC TEEF is to completely simplify the overall automation process. Automation can be a challenging task, can be daunting to QA engineers because it requires a lot of technical expertise, exposure to all the tools in the market. There are a myriad of tools available, and identifying the right tools for you, for your kind of testing, all these can be a challenge. So the idea behind RC TEEF is to unify the whole, automation under a single roof, to make a single tool that can do your functional testing, your UI validation. If there are web services, APIs that are there in your application, we can test those as well. And all of this very seamlessly and very, the idea is to make it as simple as possible. And to wrap it up, I would say the core idea is to enable QA engineers and not differentiate between manual versus automation engineers. So everyone should be able to automate is the idea behind developing such a framework. So we follow a 5-step test automation process to simplify the overall experience. So when working with web applications or any applications, the automation framework has to interact with the UI elements, and these UI elements are unique to each application. So the first step would be to capture and have the UI elements as a single repository. So with other tools in the market, what happens is you record and then play back. So the elements of the application is tightly coupled with the actual script. So that kind of hinders the usability, reusability, and when there are an enhancement, you have to re-record. A lot of complexities come up. So here the idea is to maintain a single repository for all your page objects. So whenever there are changes to the application, there are bound to be enhancements and developments on the application's lifecycle. So that means the automation script prepared thus far would become or be rendered useless, or would require a lot of repair. So in this sort of a scenario, maintaining a page object repository as a single entity would greatly simplify the overall process. So the benefits is that you create a single file that can be used by different types of test scripts that you prepare through the lifecycle of the particular application. So the next step is to create the actual script. And here is the interesting part, is that our scripts are completely written in plain English language and reusable action sentences. So usually when following or using Selenium, teams write code to test code, which, as it sounds, can be really complex and difficult. And over time, as you start accumulating a lot of tests, become really complex to maintain. So with the advent of, or by using these feature files, we write in plain English sentences that even the business, non-technical people can understand. Thereby, it extends the advantage that, everybody can take a look at what is being covered in the test automation, and that will enable the quality of coverage that we are able to achieve. Product stakeholders, the manager, project management should be able to understand what is being covered, and everyone can pitch in terms of coverage and corrections. The next thing is the Gallon spec. So this is where we write the specifications for the UI elements. So basically, we start by writing the object repositories, then we write the actual script that interacts with the repository to interact with the application. And then finally, we write the Gallon specification that does the UI comparison. So the Gallon spec is written in such a way that, it divides the application in terms of different UI components and writes out properties for each of these elements, so that when we run the tests, it makes sure that each of the elements on the page, adhere and stick to the actual specification they are supposed to. And if there is a deviation, immediately it is caught, and the failures or deviations are reported in the HTML report that is generated in the end. Step 4 is actually deciding, on what machines and what browsers we're going to be executing our tests and how we achieve it. So in today's market, our user base is really large. Users use different browsers as per their preference. There is a huge user base that uses iOS, and there is also a lot of users that go to Android and different devices like Samsung, OnePlus. So to cover all these browsers and mobile device, there is a large variation of screen sizes and mobile device sizes that your application has to properly function on. So if you're able to test on most of these, there is a peace of mind that comes that your product is working properly in all the devices. The quality of the application needs to be maintained. So our framework TIF enables support to test on any platform that is available out there. So we can test on all the browsers, all the mobile devices that are available, and the market leaders being iOS and Android. So this is achieved using Selenium grid infrastructure as well as VMs, machines, and in terms of DevOps instances as well. So these can work flawlessly. So the next one is, the report generation. Any automation framework needs to create concise and elaborate test reports. So whatever we test and validate as part of automation needs to be clearly portrayed to the user of the framework, and also the entire team that is looking at the tests and the progress of the actual tasks or the activities that is being put in by QA. So to conclude, these are the 5 steps as part of TIF that you perform, and it is pretty simple. It's straightforward and can be, performed with a very linear learning curve. So once again, I'd like to dive a little deeper on why reporting of the test automation framework is important. So with TIF, we generate a separate functional test report it's a HTML report with elaborate reporting on the past cases, failed cases, the number of steps that have passed. Steps that have passed are highlighted in green versus failures are highlighted in red, making it really easy to delve right into where the failure has occurred, what caused the failure, what kind of exception happened, was it really a bug, was it a false failure? So all these things can be clearly identified at a glance. It's a graphical representation with numbers being represented in visual formats like pie charts and bar graphs to understand the level of coverage, the level of execution, how much, like I said, the pass percentage and failure percentage. Screenshots that are taken during the execution are attached along with the report so that you can take a look at what exactly happened on the UI when the failure occurred, and also for documentation purposes in the future. And it has a dashboard report, so that based on this dashboard view, you can really take your go, no-go decisions, which are usually taken after the QA execution is done. Selenium report. This is an interesting aspect that you have a complete video recording of your execution. So that way you can just take a look and understand exactly how your application was behaving. You do not have to spend additional time trying to recreate the scenario that the script failed at. So through the video recording, you can see exactly what the video is and attach these videos to the bug tracking tool and let the developers know, okay, this is the issue that is happening. So such level of effectiveness is achieved through the reporting. The Gallon spec. So the Gallon spec report, what it does is that it shows you screenshots of how the application UI is currently behaving. So the actual, with highlights on the current screenshot that how the elements should have been versus how it is actually is. So if there is a failure, clearly highlight the failure area and why it failed. And another aspect here in Gallon is that you can also do image comparisons. So there is a heat map that shows where the deviation occurred. So that level of visual representation should enable anybody, even a layman who's completely new to the project, to be able to understand where the exact failure is happening and what should have been the expected result. And we are able to email all of these reports to the different project stakeholders, so everybody is always kept informed and they know the health of the build by taking a look at these reports. And it really helps in a normal, in a normal agile project environment as well as in DevOps environments as well. So here in this slide, I would like to go into detail about the CI/CD pipeline. So a lot of teams are moving towards DevOps. So in DevOps, this particular flow that I've highlighted is the vanilla flow. It's a usual flow that any team would be following, but there could be deviations and there could be pipelines that are much more complex, but this would serve as a general, template that would adhere or rather relate to most of the pipelines out there that different companies use. So the T framework is available from a Git repository. So the deployment for any new projects would be very simple. So you work out of an IDE, Eclipse, or there are several popular IDEs which you can use and readily be able to achieve the benefits that I mentioned earlier regarding the preparation of scripts. So being available in popular software version tools like Bitbucket, GitHub, and the entire project is managed with Maven. So all your dependencies that are part of the project is automatically downloaded, and you do not have to spend a lot of time setting up the framework in your environment. It is pretty easily done, and all of this is available in a central repository that can be downloaded and be set up in your machine. So being available in these kind of repositories enables it to integrate with any CI/CD service like Jenkins, Bamboo. So you can directly reference the test automation framework and use it for end-to-end as well as unit testing applications. So the execution can happen locally, or like I said, on VMs or third-party cloud providers like BrowserStack, or we can go ahead with Selenium, which gives us a lot of benefits. And once the test executions are done, these need to report back to the test management tool, wherein we take a look at how the tests have performed. of course, we do have the reports that are generated, but most of our tests are maintained in these test management tools like Zephyr, Qtest. There are a lot of tools to mention, so we have taken just a couple of examples. So this particular tool can integrate back to these test management tools, updates the execution status automatically, and in turn, it would update to our the overall project management tool like Jira or Team Foundation Server, etc. So that is some info on how the Team framework integrates in a CI/CD environment. So here I have a general architecture diagram of the framework that we use. So we would like to take it in a use case approach. So most teams use project management tools like Jira or TFS, and all our test cases from the testing perspective is managed in these using a test management tool that integrates with our project management tool. So all these test cases may be manual initially. So QA engineers write the scenarios by evaluating the application against the requirements. So these manual test cases would be initially during the functional testing phase be done manually, of course, but to do regression and to do repeated QA, we would like to automate. So that is when TIF comes in, and QA engineers can, for the sake of saving time and for efficiency, start automating these manual test cases that we have in our test management tools. So it is a 3-step process, like it's a 5-step process, but initially they write out 3 scripts. So like I said, the object repository where all the UI elements are stored, the feature file where you write the actual test scripts in English sentences, and the Gallon spec where you define your UI specifications. So once these are written, the RC library takes care of executing these onto all the browsers that I've already mentioned. So it supports all the platforms that we actually need to test and the platforms that actually matter to the quality of your application. We can execute our tests on cloud platform like SaaS Labs and Browser Stack out of the box. It's very, very simple, and it is supported by default. As long as you are willing to subscribe to these platforms to enable greater test coverage. And we can use Selenium for our parallel execution infrastructure. And coming to the architecture part where we talk about the reports once again. So it generates all these reports. As I had mentioned earlier, the extend report. We also create a Cucumber-based report. And we have the Gallon report where we represent how the UI has performed during the tests. And we also have the video recording. So all these test reports are emailed to stakeholders after the execution, as well as these reports are read by the continuous integration servers in the form of JSON. So all these reports are also generated in a JSON notation. So these JSON notations are read by the CI servers to update back to the test management tool. So whatever execution happens, it is logged back, and the execution status, whether a test case is pass or fail, is updated to the test management tool, and which you can view from your project management tool. So this is an overall cycle of how TIF functions in QA day-to-day activity. So like I said, this is a sample feature file. So you can see that we have a script here. And this is for one of our famous e-commerce clients. So here you can see that we open the application, validate a set of elements on the page to make sure that the web page has loaded properly. We do a wait. We can control waits within the script as well as outside the script. We can define a general wait period as well as customize it within the script. And common user interactions like mouse over, click, entering text onto a field, selecting from a drop-down. All these are pre-written. You just have to provide your application-specific elements as name value pairs within the feature file, and you're good to go. It's as simple as that. So you do not have to record. These are highly customizable. As soon as you read these sentences, you know what is being tested and how the test happens. So this is the locators, the page object repository that I spoke about. So this is the name value pair. So here we have the locator name, which is the actual locator element in your application. So you may have a username field, you may have a product button, you may have So these are some of the examples of the elements that you would see on any given application, depending on the type of application, of course. So if it's a banking money transfer application, you would have the from field where you select the source account, and to field, which is the destination account. So all these can be captured as elements and stored in this repository to be used for automation. So we can use all the, and XPath is not the only locator that is supported. We can support all types of locators that are supported by Selenium, CSS, XPath, ID. So all these attributes are also supported. So here is an example of the GSpec, the Galen spec. So this is an example of how you validate your UI automatically. So as you can see, there are a lot of numbers and percentage. These are nothing but representation of the application's UI in a Galen specification file. So basically, if you read these, you can form a mind picture of how your application would look, but also that this can be used to validate your application automatically, completely human interaction free. So that is one of the advantages of using Galen here, as opposed to other tools that just depend on image comparison using baseline screenshots. This is an example of the emailable elaborate report that we generate at the end of the execution. We also have another Cucumber-based report style as well. So there are two types of reports that we can choose from. So all the steps that you see in green are the ones that passed, and steps that have failed would be highlighted in red. Screenshots are also available from within the emailable report as well. You can see that there were 4 scenarios executed, out of which 3 have passed and 1 scenario has failed, which is highlighted in a graph on a visual representation there. So this is a representation of the trends, meaning past history of executions and how the build has performed. This is an example from the Jenkins UI. So I think that covers the description about how the framework works. So now I'd like to touch upon some of the benefits, and we have a slide on, we have a demo video that shows the actual framework in action. Before I go into that, let me just touch upon some of the benefits. So like I said, BDD with Cucumber, you're able to define your tests just like how you write your test cases. So you do not have to have a test case and then a set of Java code for your test automation. You can just convert your test case as it is into an automation script in English language itself. And that, without mentioning, you can understand all the benefits that comes with that. With Galen UI, you no longer have to, have that part of activity as a manual test. You can automate that aspect as well, saving a lot of time and creating a lot of productivity out of it. Mobile support. So a lot of applications now have a mobile version. So if you have a online banking application, it would have a desktop as well as a mobile version now. It may also have a native application in Android or iOS. So all of these can be automated from a single framework. You do not have to go to different vendors or different tools to be able to cover these in your test automation infrastructure. So all at one single point. And now teams are moving towards DevOps CI/CD. So you do not have to, worry about bringing in additional help from outside vendors to be able to integrate with CI/CD. We are able to do it easily with TEEF. So these are some of the benefits. And in CI/CD, TEEF enables, reporting back to the project management tool where you depend upon to run your project. So all your updates from the execution are brought right back into the project management tool itself. So here we have a comparison of a minor comparison with some of the prominent tools in the market with RC's TEEF. So let me quickly go through some of the points here to give you an idea of what are the advantages and what are the usual pitfalls that comes into test automation. So in terms of platform supported, RC supports all the various platforms that are out there. So does some of the other solutions with Selenium, like TestNG based frameworks, but they are highly technical. You need a lot of language knowledge, programming language knowledge. So TestNG is just one language support. TEEF, that is the BDD, is a interface that allows us to be able to write code in multiple different programming languages. So if you have teams that are familiar with different types of languages, they can choose what they want to use. But the same level of liberty may not be available with the other tools in the market. HP UFT Windows only, but with the latest update, you're able to use execution on Mac, but you have to use some workaround to be able to do that. But it comes out of the box with RCTF. Technical expertise required with RCTF is minimal because all the actions that you perform on a web application is already available. TestNG, it is high because you need to write code to be able to test your application. HP UFT and IBM RFT may have minimal because they have record and playback, but record and playback scripts have a tightly coupled nature to it and therefore a lot of maintenance to it. Script preparation and maintenance is easiest in RCTF, but complex in other tools. Software. So this is open source. The power of open source is that a large, vibrant community of developers and users report back and keep updating the tool, and this directly benefits us because we have the latest functionalities as well as almost all sorts of issues are reported right from a large user base, and we are able to reap that benefit in our framework. Like I said, we have an open source community that is constantly working around the world that helps us improve the quality of the offering. Continuous integration supports out of the box with all the continuous integration tools out there, but there may be limitations on that area with some other tools that you may be offered from the market. Test reports. Test reports are a difficult topic. So having a highly customizable test report enables you to configure the test reports the way you want, and which is possible with RCTF and some of the Selenium offerings, but may be limited in other offerings, other enterprise offerings. Browser supported. This is an important aspect why Selenium is a market leader in web application test automation. As soon as a browser comes out with an update, or if there is a new browser, for example, when Edge came out with Windows 8, Selenium was the first provider to be able to support this particular browser. And there is a lot of large community of workers, developers that I mentioned who immediately add support. And not only that, browsers themselves, the browser developers themselves provide support for Selenium to be able to, they give provisioning so that you're able to automate on these browsers. But with enterprise tools, there is a delay, and the level of browser coverage that is offered is limited. Mobile automation with Appium. Appium integrates with Selenium, uses the Selenium WebDrive IO protocol to be able to automate on mobiles, and therefore TIF is readily able to automate on any mobile device that you want to automate for your testing. Parallel test execution, like I mentioned with Selenium, you're able to automate on multiple different devices and platforms with the Selenium grid. Image recognition and comparison. So this is an interesting tool that is used for UI validations, which I've already touched upon with Galen spec. So Galen also supports image comparison if you need. So that is some of the. So now I think we can look at the actual video execution. I'll give you a clear idea of how the execution works. So here we've used a sample use case for one of our clients. So here we create a feature file from scratch and show you exactly how a script is prepared. So for the sake of saving some time, we've already captured the page object repositories from the application. So now we would be using those page object repository to create a build, create an automated test scripts completely from scratch. So the first test scenario is user is able to log into the application with valid credentials. So what this entails is that the user first opens the browser, does certain common actions on the web browser. That is like entering the username, entering the password, and then clicking the sign in button. But the test validation does not end there. When a manual user is testing, a human user is testing, he basically looks for the UI cues that says that, okay, he was able to successfully log into the application. He does that by checking if he's able to see the success message and also that he's able to see his username in the top right corner of the page. So the first step you can see is that I specify my web application is open. I do a validation statement. I should see element the application logo on the page. So that way we are confirming that the application has loaded. And we go ahead and verify some of the header navigation menus. sometimes there is a rule engine based on the location, sometimes some menus are loaded, some are not, based on offering, etc. So those kind of validations are possible here. So we are now going to do a mouse hover on a login sign up element on the page. Like I said, we can handle waits within the script. Not ideal sometimes, but we can do that here in case there are isolated areas where you need to wait for a longer period. Here, for the sake of information security, we are not entering the username and password on script. It is encapsulated in the backend. So you can see that there is a customized step that we've written for that specific application, which is also possible. And here you can see a common action wherein I say I click sign in button. So it's as simple as that to automate your scenarios on your application. And then finally, after I click the sign button, I validate that I really have signed into the application by verifying that if I can see my user account on the page or not. So usually it is a username header that appears in the top right corner. Most applications do that. So as once you sign in, you should be able to see your username or your first name, last name on the top right corner or on the top left corner of your application. So that is what we are validating over here. So we will have a couple of more scenarios in this feature file, but that would quickly be represented on the UI here in the video. So this is the Gallon spec, which is also pre-written. It would be time consuming to write that, but those are specifications regarding each and every elements of the page. So it entails a little bit of time effort. So you can see the engineer here who's prepared the script is, done the rest of the test cases, and we create tags for each test case. And to be able to run a single test case, we just need to invoke that tag. We do not have to do a lot of configuration to be able to execute our tests. So now we've executed the script using the Selenium grid infrastructure. It would be running on two parallel browsers. One is the Chrome browser and the other is Firefox. And what you're seeing is the Selenium grid UI. So you can see green highlights happening on the application. That is each element being validated. This is, of course, a sample use case. So we are validating the site based on a smoke test approach here, not a regression test. So we are not validating thoroughly so this is a sample scenario that you're seeing. So the next process in the step or the test case is to actually validate a product on that online store. So we go into the product page, validate the actual product name, validate the price, and add a few customizations before adding the product to the cart. So these are all usual test cases that a tester might perform on an e-commerce site. So the entire process is properly automated. The validations are happening. So now what we do is, we validate the address that we've entered to make sure that, the user inputs are properly captured and the product would be delivered to the right user, the right address. So this information is being validated by the framework automatically. And a report is being generated side by side in a JSON format, which is then represented in HTML. So that particular flow is complete, and the last test case, that is log out, whether user is able to log out successfully, is going to be tested automatically now. So he's signing out. So we've deliberately added a failure in the sign out section, looking for the wrong message, so that we can demonstrate a failure scenario. So here we have the Gallon spec once the UI validation is completed. So here you can see that two images are compared. So one image is purposely of a larger size, while the expected image is smaller, just to highlight the failure scenario when image comparison fails. You can see the highlight happening and the deviation. And we also have here purposely we compare two images that are different, and you can see the heat map showing difference in the images. And these are the pixel notations which describe each element on the page. You can see the highlight happen on each element. This is automatically done by the framework that identifies each element on the page and highlights them. Says that there is a certain deviation. It is supposed to be a little left of that particular element, but it is 22 pixels away, which shouldn't be the case. So this is how it highlights failures in the UI. So this is the code that I put you a screenshot of, where we have 3 scenarios, 2 have passed and one has failed. So tabs that you're seeing on screen are the ones that have passed. we've captured a screenshot in a past scenario as well, so you can see that. And now we would be showing the failure case with, represented in the report, and there's failure. The reports are customizable. We can opt for a different UI. We have different types of UI that can be used for the report. Here's so we had end user login logout scenario, which you can see was captured. So this is the video recording that I had mentioned earlier, the entire execution. So you can see that the video is captured for the entire execution, and you have other information like what platform it was executed, what was the screen resolution, what is the location of the execution, meaning machine, details like that. So it is available for all the different parallel execution that you've done. So you can go back to these videos, add these videos as logs in the bugs that you highlight. You can download and store them for future use. There's a lot of application to having these videos recorded during your execution, especially crucial builds and production smoke test, etc. So that concludes the video execution. So now I would like to go through a few case studies for some of the clients that we've implemented the solution. So like I mentioned, we've implemented the solution for one of a popular North American sports apparel e-commerce store. They had a challenge wherein they had to constantly regression test their application, wherein testers were doing repeated tests, efficiency of which may drop down as they repeat the same test over and over again. So they had a lot of regression tests. They had a lot of functionality tests to perform. So if these regression tests, repeated activity could be automated, their QA could spend more time doing functional and exploratory tests that can turn out more bugs in their system. So they had a urgent automation, and we were able to achieve more than 80% test coverage, test automation coverage, and we were also able to implement UI test automation to give them a value add in their overall testing. So a lot of time saved in terms of repeated tests and manual test activity. So the entire technical process was completely simplified, and they could easily add new test scenarios to their existing portfolio. So this is one of the value adds and values delivered by RCTIF, and it is ongoing. So they are using it in a CI/CD environment where they do complete end-to-end tests in a testing environment, and as well as do smoke tests on production as well. So this is what we do in this instance for from Royal Cyber as a service offering. And here we have another credit union where they wanted to completely set up a CI/CD continuous delivery platform. So this started from the actual build process to deployment to different QA environments, UAT environment, and then finally to production. So we were able to provide a complete CI/CD solution from the scratch till the end, and we were able to use TIF for the testing, end-to-end testing, as well as unit testing efforts that they perform at their end. So this is another example of that, and we have one more example wherein we were able to, so here the requirement was a lot of APIs needed to be tested, which we were able to do with RC's TIF offering. There are other tools in the market that enable API testing, but here we can do it with the same behavior-driven English scripts to enable testing these APIs. So as part of our QA offering to prospective clients, in this particular scenario, we are taking two approach. We are taking a two-prong approach. So there may be clients that are new and want to completely set up their overall automation infrastructure from scratch. So in that case, we follow the following steps in setting up their automation infrastructure. So the first question that teams that want to approach automation would be, why automation? What is the business value? So we do know how automation enables better productivity, and why we go to automation. A lot of time, manual and a lot of resource time is saved by being able to automate our repeated test activity. Their time can be used for more productive aspects of QA activity, like I mentioned earlier, exploratory testing, new functional testing, that will, in turn deliver larger defects. So once they identify that, okay, they want to go with automation, what we do is we showcase our capabilities with RCTF, tailored to the need that they have. If they have a certain pain points, we can come out with a solution that would, highlight the areas on how we can provide solutions for their problem areas. So RCTF demo can be provided with a detailed case study. We can have custom workshops and interactions with the business team and their QA team if they have one, to enable and make them understand how we can implement TIF in their infrastructure and how it comes into play. We can have prototyping whiteboard sessions wherein we demonstrate the capability. We set up the demo TIF implementation wherein we show the possibility. And all this is building up to a proof of concept scenario wherein we can perform a proof of concept. So basically, we identify the problem areas in their test application and their actual application, identify the use cases the application caters, and build a POC to these use cases. And we can deliver the result of these POC and continue with the rest of the activity, that is implementation, and taking it forward on a business as usual perspective. So this particular offering is for teams that already have a test framework and are not actually reaping benefits out of it. So we can understand their specific pain points, where they had failures, where there were issues that they couldn't overcome with test automation, identify those areas and exactly provide a solution from that perspective. So we can create an architecture and flow for the end-to-end automation that they are currently lacking and be able to fulfill those gaps with RCTF. So we provide all the necessary information through calls, through, like I said earlier, prototyping, participate with their test team, understand their scope, identify the use cases that they need to automate and the reason they set out automation in the first place. So all these are identified, and we create a custom POC once again to teams that require to be able to bridge the gap that they had initially missed. And we publish the POC results, and based on this, teams can take a decision on whether they would like to go ahead, and that's how we cater. And once the decision is made, this is the kind of approach that we take to implement our solution. Basically understanding the requirements once again, doing a feasibility analysis of how much of automation is possible to achieve and what improvements can be done. Then the provisioning of the framework happens, wherein we actually set up the framework, start automating. So we start preparing the test cases, we automate. We can also provide training to existing team on how to automate with TIF, and then hand over the entire process, which we've done in the past as well. Then teams can start executing these tests, reap the benefits, see how it goes, and the automation framework starts generating reports, and the teams start using it on a long-term basis. That, I think, we conclude the demonstration here today. Thank you so much.
Thank you.